Bohemia Interactive's latest map for DayZ is called Sakhal, and with it comes a bunch of new assets including snow, mountains and several traversable islands. But is it actually worth the money? Well, here I'll tell you absolutely everything you need to know about it, and if you should buy it, wait for a sale, or just stick with regular old DayZ. If you liked the video, please leave a like or a subscribe, it really helps me out. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Oh, it's that kind of party. Let's focus on the player and the player's experience before we get to the actual map itself, because there are some things you need to know first. When you first land in Sakhal, you're immediately met with a brand new concern: the weather. This is now much colder, something we've never experienced on official DayZ before. You spawn in around the coast on the main island, with the ultimate goal to be to explore or go deeper inland to get higher tier loot. Towns around the coast feel a lot closer together than and there does seem to be more of them, but this doesn't make gearing up any easier. In fact, due to the more spread out police stations and military facilities, it does require a change of strategy, and you'll be relying more on civilian looting to get supplies you need, such as guns and medicine, rather than these traditionally useful buildings. But as I said, you'll find the deeper inland you travel, the better the loot you find, but the loot itself is now balanced completely differently, and certain clothing items or even tools are specifically chosen to fit the theme of the map, which is a more Eastern style. For example, you seem to find a lot more Eastern style clothing and items, including guns and vodka bottles, which are scattered throughout. Zucchinis and peppers are the main produce here, and you'll have a very specific looting style as you progress. You'll also have Sakhal unique items like winter ghillies, military uniforms, and this is actually my favorite jacket right here. It's a nice change. But what about the size? As we know, the map is 83 kilometers squared or 105 kilometers with ice caps, but this doesn't ever really feel too small. The verticality and the hazards traversing make the map feel a lot larger than it actually is, and the reduced player spawns balances out quite well so it never feels too overcrowded. It's not enough that you don't get interaction, but it's enough that you don't feel like every spawn is too dangerous to start it. That being said, the map obviously is smaller, but it does feel more dense than the other maps, offering a lot more little towns, farms, special points of interest and literal mountains you can decide to cross, so it really comes down to what you favor more. But something that this map brings is caution. You probably don't want to get caught in a blizzard in the middle of nowhere, and given how altitude can affect cold, sometimes going around rather than over to reach a destination is the smart choice. And when you hear the wind start to whistle and the trees rustle, indicating an approaching storm, it might be best to hunker down in the nearest town or hut, eat something, make some food, make sure you can get to your destination safely. Because blizzards can cause an issue, one of the things they do is just completely white everything out so you don't really know where you are. The next thing is they make you a lot colder as well, adding a lot more fun to just general route planning. Honestly, blizzards are a great survival addition, but one of the things noticeably missing from towns is wells. They've been replaced by springs. Springs are good because they add a new asset with a calming sound surrounding them to try and make Sakhal feel more distinct, but they can be extremely difficult to find at first, and I think a lot of players will struggle. However, this isn't the only way to get hydrated, and personally I've been relying on other sources as well. One of them now is snow. Snow can be consumed in DayZ, giving you much needed hydration, and it's everywhere, although you will need to purify or treat it first or risk heavy metal poisoning. This will not only affect your vision depending on the stage, but also makes you deaf. It sort of sounds like you're underwater, and it's extremely debilitating, but completely curable with chelating pills. But let's move on to the map itself. Environmentally speaking, the map is filled with a number of points of interest. From large airfields and hot springs to smaller things like broken roads and bridges to caves, some of which are perfect for base building. If you can see a place, you can probably go there, but I always rate it more on not if you can go there, but rather if I want to go there. And most of the time, the answer is yes. I'll get to the exceptions in a moment. The radome, antennas, the prison, the bunker, the hamlets, and many other unique places are all extremely fun to visit and walk around. And climbing the mountain just to see a cool point of interest in the distance and be able to travel there just never gets old. The other smaller islands off the coast of the main one look cool from a distance, but there's not really a lot to do on them. Most of them are just there to explore or base build, and I think there could have been more reason to stay there, but they are a bit empty. You can either use ice sheets or the new boats to get there. I definitely recommend the latter, it's a lot safer, but I did hear they were seeing how players interact with these islands before deciding on just what to do with them. And yes, there is a bunker and it's easy to enter and packed with loot, but I don't want to spoil it here. Let's just say when you enter, you'll be leaving a very happy bunny. And hot springs are warmer areas that offer respite. Just don't stay in the water or else you'll get burnt. Speaking of burnt, the volcano has amazing views, and aesthetically, as I'm sure you can see, there are heaps of other mountains and other incredible views and picturesque landscapes that Sakhal offers. I think I spent half my time playing just taking screenshot after screenshot. Every single view here is a spectacle. Compared with the other maps, this place absolutely looks the best. In my opinion, in terms of aesthetics, there's no better map on DayZ, modded or official, and when you think about how beautiful some of them are, that's a big claim. The forests are dense and claustrophobic, the towns are scattered throughout the hills, and the homes themselves are stacked around each other like a terraced village. And it's not just the layout of the towns and the villages and the hamlets and the cities, but the clutter and the mess that's sprinkled around them, with everywhere looking lived in, used and run down. There are just assets everywhere used in completely creative ways, lots of them new, from old tires, fly tip, to sheds organized in realistic ways, to rubbish, to chicken coops, traps covered in garden projects, trailers, wood piles, rotten boats, and much more. And even the fences are built and placed in thoughtful ways, making it not just look and feel like these houses once had a living, breathing family in them that spent years repairing and maintaining this old fence, but it also makes navigating through them way more interesting. But what about the inside of these buildings? Well, the inside of these buildings are a mix of lots of unique designs, remixes of old designs, and of actual old designs. So yes, there are some repeated interiors, which I know some players may take issue with, but because there are so many brand new ones, I think keeping the older ones is an attempt to add more variety to exploration, so you don't walk into every building with it looking the exact same, because now it makes you walk into a building not knowing exactly what layout you're going to get, and it changes how you loot and how you search for loot. But pretty much every house I can think of has its own unique variant in the world, including dock warehouses, military buildings, and general houses. But I think my favorite part of the new designs is just how well they reflect this region. The colors are a lot warmer and more rustic, the rugs on the walls, the holes in the floor, and even the assets they've reused are used in an extremely creative way, making them look and feel like new assets, even when they're not. There was genuinely a few times when I had to take a second look at some items just to see if they were new or reused from the old ones. But I think you can see here just how creative the developers have been, even with the older assets. But moving on from the smaller assets, they also have a lot of completely unique places too, so it's not just the colors and the interiors that have changed. There's also a decent amount of new places added. This spans from huge facilities to smaller homes. It includes military areas which are scattered all around the island, offering various kinds of military loot, to the geothermal plant, which is sort of centered in the middle of the island, and you can just get some incredible views from here. And this is helped by the fact that there's a lot of environmental storytelling around Sakhal, from the buses ready to leave the military areas as if they were part of a failed evacuation attempt, to the blood splatter on the floors and walls of many houses. It tells the story of a world that quickly went to hell. This is something we didn't get in Chernarus and we got a little of in Livonia, but I think is in an abundance here. The world feels lived in. You can almost see the fishermen working through the bitter chill to get their next catch, or the families trudging through the slush to collect some eggs from their coops. I love environmental storytelling, so this is something I paid a lot of attention to. But I think one of the most underrated aspects of the map, and something I think a lot of players will underestimate until they play it, is the sound. The sound is completely different to other maps. Seriously, this makes so much difference I didn't even realize. The seagulls, the blizzard blizzards, the way the boats croak when you're on your way near them, the crack of the wood from decrepit buildings, and even owls at night. I didn't hear a single familiar atmospheric sound, or if I did, it was so well blended that everything felt brand new. But all that aside, what about the difficulty? Well, with regards to the difficulty, it's definitely something that's more difficult than its predecessors, and it's not just the temperature but also little things too. Things like rabbits instead of chickens, which are now more difficult to spot in the tall grass, and springs being just a little bit out the way. The forced reliance on prevention over cure, and other slight differences that just require a little bit more strategy or thought. Trying to get to other islands or even deeper in the island can be a challenge as well if you don't have good temperature management skills. If you're a brand new player with next to no hours in DayZ, I'd spend a few hours on one of the other maps first. Learn how to build a fire, how insulation works, how to cook food, and just how to get stable, and then give it a try. Just know that there is a difficulty increase here. But if you have a few hours in DayZ, you should be able to adapt in time. Also, the coast of Sakhal isn't actually too difficult to survive at all, but the deeper you go, the higher you go up. It can be a challenge, especially in blizzards where you're blinded or caught off guard by starving wolves. But what hasn't changed enough? Well, most of the infected are almost identical to what we know in DayZ, which does let it down a little bit. Even a changing colour of clothing would have been nice, but we just get a lot of the same ones but with frostbite. Don't get me wrong, there are white scientists and stuff that look cool and are harder to hit, but the ones you'll be encountering the most are just mostly what we've seen in other maps. But as good as all this is it actually worth the extra money? I think for this to be a yes, two other questions need to be answered first. The first one being, does the map offer a different enough experience to justify spending money on additional content? We already have a DayZ experience, does this one offer more of the same? Okay, so I've spoken about Livonia before and how in my view it never really offered that unique variant we wanted when it released, and although it was a decent map, it needed to cook a little bit longer and it offered nothing new. So to answer the first question, Sakhal is nothing like that. It genuinely feels like a completely new and authentic experience, with everything being tailored to really increase that hardcore survival to its fullest. It's not just a new map, but the new mechanics, features, strategies, way of doing things, and so much more. So this question is a definite yes. But what about the next one? Are you getting enough here in this package to spend your money on, or should you wait for a decent sale? Well, I think the video itself probably showcases exactly how I feel on this point. Yeah, I think you get a lot here. Look, there are a few little things here that I think could be improved on, such as the infected being a little bit different and maybe the islands having more reason to go there. But overall, I can't fault it. And after playing it and then going back and then playing the other maps, I think I'd go as far as to say, in my opinion, this is the definitive edition of DayZ. And I really don't say that lightly. If you're on console, then I think this is probably a no-brainer. If you're on PC and you think you can get the same experience with other modded maps, I just don't think you can, or at least I never have. If this was something you were on the fence about, I'd say take the leap. If you're sort of leaning towards the no, or if you're still unsure, maybe check out this video here, or become a member and check out some of my Sakhal gameplay or some videos that are too spicy for my main channel. But as always, until next time.